that will be referring to the lab that just ended. I'm just telling this for the people who weren't there for the lab, just to give you a context of today's event. So I would like to present to you Philo, and it always makes me kind of smile because you will be speaking about the project which is called FILLA, and your name is Philo, so I guess I would know I'm like 100% of the people who ever had this to do this introduction made this joke, but yes, so I'm just joining the crowd. So
yeah, thank you. I haven't shared this project into so many places, so this is the first time I'm presenting it, so I'm very excited for that. And I'm very happy to be here, so thank you so much for having me. I'm also very excited to be here at this thing that we call Story Code. Been at a Story Code in New York once before, that was really great, and I saw great people presenting great projects there. Just looking at this logo, I realized that what a great logo that is. That is like a C and an S at the same time. And I started to think like how do I think about this combination of story and code? What are those things? I've been working very hard on combining those concepts for the last 8 years or so. So, you know, do they have like this yin-yang kind of balance, that they're kind of like two sides of one coin and they're like in balance? And I thought that's not really how I think about it. Is it perhaps that there's one thing that is pumping perhaps the code, we use it to pump the story around this, I don't know, this emotional experience. And perhaps that's a little bit true. And then I thought maybe it could also be a little bit like a roller coaster. And I think that's kind of a nice, I like that as a metaphor, because you know, we have like this track that we can author as authors, whether we are filmmakers or script writers or something else. Then we, of course, we place something on that track, which is kind of a device, and it can have different shapes and dimensions, etc. Importantly, we need a support also for that track to make that track even possible to have it there in the air, and that's kind of like maybe the technology that we use to scaffold and to support our storytelling. And last but not least, why it's like so far out of these three, my favorite metaphor is that it's the one that has users inside that device. So it's kind of like, you know, storytelling for me, it's not about any of these things as much as that it's about that moment that you are just at the top before going down and people go, whee! Because that's what you want to have as a result of your storytelling mostly. It doesn't have to be that kind of particular emotion, maybe it's another emotion or another feeling that you want to transfer. But that's the kind of impact that I think most of us are interested in with our storytelling. But then of course it's not a regular roller coaster, because this roller coaster we can control, because we're talking here about digital, dynamic, interactive stories. So perhaps there's an element of control. We can incorporate data, so our story can respond to data. It can be different based on the weather or based on the time of the day. Because it's dynamic, we can also incorporate things like chance. We can make it playful and a little bit game-like. And we can make stories that perhaps are a little bit less like a traditional story, and maybe it's more about creative expression. And all these things excite me a lot. So what I want to talk about, first a little bit about some of my adventures in cultural storytelling. Then zoom in on one particular type of adventure that we also focused on in the workshop that I was facilitating during the lab, where I'll talk a little bit about a project where we used chatbots in the context of museums. And then last but not least, people from the Digital Storytelling Lab asked me like, hey, maybe you can also talk a little bit about hackathons, or hack jams as I like to call them, because I understand that you did a hackathon at the National Museum, and so there's a nice overlap potentially. Perhaps we can learn something from each other. And also, of course, we are here in this lab, which was kind of like a hack jam. And I think they have a lot of potential for innovation within storytelling. So this is where I work half of my time. This is in Bratislava. On the left side, you have this amazing brutalist architectural building from 74. And next to it, we have this this palace building from 1 century earlier. It's a nice neo-Romantic style. However, and so that bridge behind there, there's more buildings, and it's kind of like the main building of the Slovak National Gallery, where I work in the Research and Development Lab. Unfortunately, though, since I think more than 10 years now, it's having problems. So when this was constructed in the 70s, they used cheaper materials than the architect had originally planned. So even though it looks like concrete, actually the paneling, the facade is wood. It's just painted wood. And so it started to leak and actually endangered a lot of the artworks. So it had to close down, and now, fortunately, since the last, I think, almost 4 years, it's undergoing a big reconstruction. And it means that we don't have access to our main building, and we only have those 3 floors with the white windows available for both a semi-permanent exhibition, that we call the non-permanent exhibition, and then 2 floors available for rotating exhibitions. And because we have this limited amount of space, digital is even more important for us. So fortunately, we have been working on this platform called Web Umenia. It means Web of Art in Slovak. And it's an open collection platform for digitized artworks from our collection at the Slovak National Gallery. But we also are an umbrella project for all public fine art galleries in Slovakia, who since the 70s use the same central registry. So it basically means they are in the same database using the same schema, and so it's really easy for us to build a web application that showcases all of that. So sneak peek into Webomania. Yeah, as I mentioned, so like we host quite a lot of artworks. So we have currently more than 120,000 artworks. Not all of those are with images, but a lot of them are. It also hosts collections and articles. So I can jump into one of those collections. This is a nice one with nice prints from Bratislava. And yeah, it's kind of like a bit like a social network for digitized art, right? So every artwork, every painting has its own profile, and I can click this and I can see the super high-res images, and I can zoom in all the way to see the castle. And I can see related artworks. I can browse and I can filter and I can search. So actually this interface is kind of like predicated on this big thing, top middle. It has really the prime real estate of this website is the search box. And most online collection platforms of museums have this. And the search box is really great when you know exactly what you're looking for. But 90% of our users probably don't know exactly what they're looking for. They want inspiration, or they want a nice black and white image. But how do you search for that in the search box? Even though we have some nice technology to make searching really fast and stuff, it's still perhaps not the best way to explore a vast collection like that. Actually, I'm really quite inspired by this guy called John Falk. He thinks a lot and writes a lot about museums and museums in the digital age. And he says, well, you know what, for museums it's not about creating different exhibits and programs, it's about creating different visitor experiences. So for me this is a really interesting question. How do you create on top of a platform with more than 100,000 artworks, how do you create meaningful experiences? Or in other words, what we have built with this platform is access, the whole museum world is doing this. I assume that you guys are also massively digitizing. And by putting that out there on the website, and we do our best, everything that can be public domain is public domain, so you can download that in full resolution, print it on t-shirts and sell it for money. Or make a remix of it, or create a chatbot with it. Like, we want people to do that. But the first step that we've created is this access through this platform. The next step that we would like to see is, of course, impact. So really tell something with this and put it in the hands of people, and then hopefully they do something with it, or they have a meaningful change in their life. And I still don't know exactly how we can do that, or how we can do that better. But that's kind of like how I think about what we're doing with our digital work in the museum sector. So if we think about ways, okay, how can we create meaningful experiences? Well, we've been doing that for thousands and thousands of years, and we've always been telling stories. And so storytelling for me is a great way to enable meaningful experiences with vast amounts of content. I want to share with you one project where we used one particular technique for storytelling that was quite a big experiment, but I think it worked out nicely, where we created a digital project, a digital story linked to one exhibition, and we chose to use the chatbot format. Sorry if I repeat myself a little bit for people who were part of the lab. Essentially, earlier this year, we opened an exhibition which was in the theme for the 100-year anniversary of Czechoslovakia. The country was founded in 1918, there's like a year-long partnership between the Slovak National Gallery and the Moravian Gallery in Brno, in Czech Republic. And so these two galleries decided, okay, we're going to celebrate this 100-year anniversary with an exhibition in the Slovak National Gallery, and we're going to showcase the works of art of two iconic painters. From the Czech part of Czechoslovakia, we have FILLA, and from the Slovak part, we have FULLA. So now we had FILLA and FULLA, and they're Czech and they're Slovak, and the curators wanted something digital around that. And so when we were brainstorming that, we kind of like very quickly came up with, wouldn't it be nice if there would be a dialogue between these two guys, FILLA and FULLA? And we could even have it one speaking Czech and one speaking Slovak, why not? And so we started looking for inspiration to see what other chatbots are out there, because chatbots for the last 2 years have been quite a hype. So there's lots of companies that use chatbots on their websites. People make chatbots for Slack, if people use Slack for work. And we started looking at different things. So again, if you were in my workshop, you've seen this already, sorry. But I want to show for the other people a couple of things that are kind of like my personal favorites. So obviously we looked at the museum domain, and actually SF MoMA has this lovely project called Send Me SF MoMA. And so what they did is their collection is even huger, even larger than the Slovak National Gallery. So they have millions of items. But what you can do when this loads is use a phone number and send a text to say, hey, SF MoMA, send me a bit of this kind of art. So they send you some instructions, tell you how to play the game, and you can ask to SF MoMA to send you some sunshine, and they send you an artwork that some way or another has an association with sunshine, or send you something pink, or even send you something that relates to an emoji. So you will receive something that has to do with coffee. And so this is a really nice example for me to say, like, okay, we take this collection, which is literally more than 1 million items, and we make this really personal, and everyone can join because everyone has a mobile phone and it's just text, right? and it's also quite coded. It's but it's nicely conversational. Another thing from the journalism domain is this project by the Financial Times, where they were looking into addressing the difficult concept of the gig economy, right? So the gig economy is like instead of having a regular secure job where you get a regular salary, now you might be renting a room through Airbnb, and you make some money driving a car at Uber. And so instead of writing like a very data-heavy reporting piece, they say, well, we welcome you, we invite you to come see what is it like to be an Uber driver yourself. And so still, even though this is kind of like a fictional experience, it's still based on real reporting and lots of interviews with real drivers. And so the way you are introduced into your role is you hear that you are a full-time Uber driver with 2 kids to support and a $1,000 mortgage payment due this week. So, okay, there we go. We can choose whether we want easier or harder. We want harder, of course. And so we walk through these situations where we have to make impactful choices. And those choices affect how our progress in the game and eventually in our life, whether we are able to pay our mortgage bill and support our kids. And so I find it a nice example of something that places you in the shoes of another person, right? Chris Milk, in his famous TED Talk, he talks about virtual reality as this great empathy machine, right? Because now you can really feel what it is like to be somewhere, to be this other person, maybe in a Syrian refugee camp. And I think something similar is at play here, because I'm of course faced with very simplified agencies, simplified actions, but still I get to relate more to the situation of this other person. Last thing I'll show you for reasons of time is this. This is a project from the Netherlands, and it kind of like they first made it in Dutch, and then it went quite viral, and then they decided, okay, we should really translate it into English. So it's at getbadnews.com, and I want to show you, because this is what we dealt with during the lab, this idea of like filter bubbles and fake news and those kind of things. And so we are invited to play this game, and we're still not quite sure what's happening. So we're welcomed, and we're asked like, hey, you're here for the position of disinformation and fake news tycoon, is that right? Yeah, sure. You must be frustrated about something, right? Aren't we all? You can get started by using Twitter to vent. So we have here an option, a list of options to tweet angry tweets. I like this one. So we're going to tweet this angry tweet, and that choice is affecting my status in this game or in this story, right? So I now jumped up to have 19 followers, but my credibility score also went down. No, I haven't logged in with Twitter. No, they could have made that, but no, it's just a fake tweet. Yeah. Would have been a funny twist. Yeah. So this is just to show you, like, this is these conversational interfaces and these chatbots are finding their ways into lots of creative domains. It's not just commercial companies who want to enable you to order pizza via Facebook. Now then, when we started the project for the FULLA exhibition, we had a couple of constraints, and constraints are great because constraints help you to answer things and to decide how are we going to do this. So first of all, of course, because it's tied to an exhibition, we knew the deadline. We knew when the exhibition was opening, and we wanted to be ready when the exhibition opened. Not only because that would be the start of a marketing campaign, but also because we decided that this app was going to run in the exhibition. So now we were not only making a web project, but we were also making something that was going to be on full screen iPads in kiosk mode as part of the exhibition. very quickly we realized that we need to work with someone who knows how to write in an engaging way. So we don't have a scriptwriter in our team, so we decided to work with an external scriptwriter. Also, I realized we need something that is better than Microsoft Word. Because if we want to make a branching narrative, we need to think in a branching way. And Microsoft Word forces you to think in a linear way. So I kind of wanted to have a graphical user interface that I could give to the scriptwriter that could help her to think in that way. Also, we are at the Slovak National Gallery, we don't have a lot of budget for these kind of projects, besides the salaries of our team. So ideally we would find a tool that we could build on that would enable us to work quickly and make the deadline, and would also be free. And second of all, I've written down free as in speech, because we also wanted it to be open source, because we wanted it to make it work on our terms and be really specific to what we needed. Then we also realized, well, if we want to kind of like play with this concept of the suspension of disbelief. Of course you know that it's not really Emil FILLA and Ludwig FULLA, because those guys are dead. So you know it's a chatbot, but how can we do as many things as possible to give you the feeling that it's still a real person, even though you know it's not. We also had to have some authorial control. So we needed to write a good story. It needed to feel like a good story, and we needed to have control about the things that we could tell. We didn't want to just have like a random AI generated story. And lastly, also because we are the National Gallery, accessibility and inclusivity is really important for us. So this needs to work for most amount of people. And it meant, for example, for me, but also for my colleagues, that we didn't want to make something that would only work on Facebook Messenger. So we have this great project from the Slovak National Gallery, but you need a Facebook account to use that. So those were kind of our constraints. And a couple of the solutions that we came up with was, first of all, my favorite solution to most creative projects is to steal like an artist. So if we want to make something that looks like a chat app, well, let's look at the design and the UI design, the user interface design of chat apps. So I made like this analysis of like Facebook Messenger. How does Facebook Messenger really work in terms of UI? And how does WhatsApp work, the web version of WhatsApp? And we try to steal as many of the solutions that they are using in our design. Of course, I kind of mentioned it before, like I didn't want to make a chatbot authoring system from scratch. That's not why I'm hired. Yeah, kind of we looked for open source tools that we could use and build upon. Yeah, we kind of also looked around and saw examples from, for example, Microsoft, who thought, oh, this will be great, chatbots. We're going to make a Twitter bot that learns from users to talk about things, and then it got trolled, and like within days it was putting out anti-Semitic, fascist kind of messages. So for us it was quite an easy solution. Like we didn't even look at AI generated stuff. Like, so this bot is not artificially intelligent, it's completely scripted, so we had complete control. And the last solution, which links to the accessibility, is that we decided, hey, we're just going to make a web app that scales down to a mobile view responsively, and this is how everyone can access it. The only thing you need is the URL and a web browser. It's on your laptop, it's on your phone, it's everywhere you want to go. So, without further ado, I should show you. So this is the project website. It's available in Slovak and English. When we started, we weren't quite sure whether we would even translate it into English, because it's such a Czechoslovak story. The chat actually takes place, one of the chatbots speaks Czech and the other one speaks Slovak, which is fine for Czechs and Slovaks, less so for me. It was only that we, like midway or like near the end of the project, that we realized like, okay, this project is going to be really cool. So like let's also translate it into English so I can share it with you guys here and with other people. So landing page, we are welcomed. We get a little bit of context, and we are invited to start a story. And when we start, we encounter a very familiar interface, and we get two characters who introduce themselves by sharing their, well, either self-portrait as a photograph or self-portrait as a painting. So we have here this blue guy with the avatar, that's FILLA, and we have FULLA in red. And yeah, I guess I don't have to tell you that I can click on one of these to continue the conversation. So when I do that, I choose one particular branch in the narrative, and I get a response to that. And this continues like this. And in total, if I want to really get to the depth of this story, I could spend about 20 minutes on this, which I think is long. I think it's actually maybe too long. Some people have done it. Interestingly, our analytics tell us that people spend on average 5 minutes on this, which is incredibly long, I think. And so that's a really great point. And so this is how we can evolve the story essentially. How are we doing for time? I don't know. Okay, cool. I get the cue. So then maybe I keep this short, because actually you will be talking about hackathons. Very briefly, about 5 years ago, HTML5 video came out, and I saw a huge opportunity for filmmakers and web developers to make stories together on the web. I went to an event in London called Mozilla Festival, and I saw the premiere of a documentary project that was taking place completely on the web. There was the High Rise project, which is actually made by Mike. So that was really like massive inspiration for me to realize, like, okay, we can tell these kind of stories on the web. Another thank you goes to Richard, because years before, the first ever hackathon that I joined was the 48-hour film project, where a bunch of filmmakers came together and made a short film in 48 hours. And so I kind of like took those ideas and other ideas that I had about this potential to merge these two disciplines, and we started organizing hack jams. I think maybe somewhere just outside of the frame, Mike is somewhere there at a table mentoring. This is in Barcelona. And so the idea of our hackathon, which is called Popathon, because we combined popcorn and hackathon, because there was a tool called popcorn.js, and the name stuck. It's not the best name. But what was the most important thing was that we combined these different disciplines. So filmmaking, web development, graphic design, editing, and have a mentor involved. That's very important. So the concept is we collaborate with these different disciplines, we make something, and then we share all the code open source. So it's not just us learning together at the event, but other people can also study the code and learn from it later after the event. So in 4 years now, we've been to 9 cities, we've done more than 20 events, had more than 300 participants, and I estimate roughly 40 prototypes, which very little of those are still online. But I think it's a good score. Very briefly, when I started thinking about what would I share in terms of lessons of when you organize a hackathon, first of all, I would say, like, be the hack you want to host. So like, if you want to have filmmakers, web developers, and designers, like, get that team together and organize it with a filmmaker and with a web developer and with a designer. And I was very fortunate to have that team. Also, think about your event as a platform to let other people shine. So make it about the people who are participating, let them present what they have created, let them be proud of what they create, but also involve partners, like maybe you want to involve an NGO who has lots of data, who can provide data that can be used as a material for storytelling. Process is always more important than the outcomes, even though I love to have open source code at the end. It's much more about what happens during the event, and also, and this took me quite a while to realize this, that actually it's not so much about the events, but it's more about the community that you build with running multiple events. Very important to have principles, so know what kind of atmosphere you want to have and communicate that to the participants and to the mentors to make sure that you have whatever kind of event you want to have. For us it was inclusivity was very important. Do it multiple times and iterate, make it better, learn from the last mistakes or the feedback that you get. As I said, like the community aspect was kind of like important. So about 2.5 years ago, we started a Slack called Storytellers United, with the idea that storytelling is this thing that we do with web developers, with graphic designers, with filmmakers, etc. We have a community of more than 300 people now. It runs on Slack, so sorry if you don't use Slack. This might be a good reason to get started. And you can go to storytellers.link and request an invite, and then you will become part of the community. So with that, I thank you very much. And if you want to see these slides, they're on the URL.
Okay.